The wind swept across Bar Hollow Ranch like an old soul with nowhere left to rest, carrying dust, memory, and the faint scent of forgotten summers. Mara stood at the center of it all, still as a fence post driven too deep into the earth to move, not because she wanted to stand strong, but because everything inside her was too numb to know what else to do. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked boards of the barn, highlighting the faded banner hanging slack against the old wood. The red paint was chipped, the letters barely visible, but she could read them even with her eyes closed. Hollow Creek Auction, Final Notice. It was the sentence that had ended her childhood, the one event that had taken her from hopeful to homeless in the span of a single week. She took a shaky breath that tasted of dust and regret. "Pull it down," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Finish it." It wasn't a command, more like a plea, soft and desperate, carved from years of unspoken pain. She wrapped her arms around herself, not for warmth but because the ranch felt bigger than she remembered, as if the empty land held every echo she'd tried so hard to run from. Jace Turner lingered a few steps away, watching her with eyes that understood more than she had ever said. Tall and broad-shouldered with the type of quiet strength that didn't demand attention but always earned it, Jace had shown up at exactly the moment she would have fallen apart. He was the kind of man who didn't rush, didn't pry, didn't try to fix everything with fast words or empty promises. He simply stood where he was needed and waited until the storm passed. That was something Mara had forgotten men were capable of. "You sure?" he asked softly, his voice carrying the weight of genuine concern rather than doubt. He fiddled with the edge of his glove, watching her as if giving her one more chance to say no. She nodded, though her throat tightened painfully. "It's the last thing left from that day. I can't keep moving forward with it hanging there, reminding me I failed." Jace stepped closer, his boots crunching over gravel. "You didn't fail." The words should have bounced off her. Instead, they lodged somewhere deep, where all her hidden wounds lived. He reached up and grabbed the rope that held the banner. The barn groaned like it recognized him. Mara held her breath. The rope stretched, creaking with age, and then with one final tug, it snapped free. The banner fluttered like a dying flame before folding into itself and falling heavily to the ground. A cloud of dust lifted, drifting across Mara's boots. It felt like a punch to her chest. Her knees buckled before she could stop them, and she sank to the hard-packed dirt, hands trembling against her thighs. The weight of 10 years pressed down on her shoulders. The memory of neighbors whispering behind her back, the sheriff explaining the auction, the bitter disbelief of friends who disappeared as fast as her father, everything hit her at once. Jace didn't rush toward her, didn't crowd her. He knelt beside her, quiet and steady, like a pillar driven into the earth. His presence filled the empty space around her in a way that wasn't overwhelming, just grounding. "I thought coming back would make me stronger," she whispered, staring at the fallen banner. "It feels like I'm breaking again instead." Jace lowered his head slightly. "Breaking isn't failing. It means you're finally letting something out instead of holding it all in." His voice had a warmth that seeped into the cracks she'd been pretending didn't exist. "The sheriff said my father couldn't handle the pressure," she continued, her voice fragile. "But I can't shake the thought that maybe he left because of me." Jace's jaw tightened, not with anger, but with empathy. "Mara, parents run from their own ghosts, not their kids." She closed her eyes, every breath trembling. "Feels like the whole town blamed me. Then the town was wrong." He said it with simple conviction, the kind that didn't try to argue with her pain, just offered her a different truth to hold on to. The wind picked up, brushing a strand of hair across her cheek. For the first time since she arrived, she didn't feel like the land was pushing her away. She felt almost welcomed, as if the ranch, broken as it was, had waited for her return. Mara drew a slow breath and stood carefully, brushing dirt from her jeans. Jace stood too, his movement unhurried, giving her time to find her balance. "What now?" he asked, not as a challenge but as an invitation. She scanned the bunkhouse, the fields overgrown with knee-high grass, the corral where she used to race her horse in circles until her father shouted for her to slow down. Everywhere she looked, she saw a past she had loved, one that had crumbled long before she understood how fragile life could be. "I want to clean the house tomorrow," she said finally. "Start with something real, something I can actually fix." Jace nodded. "I'll bring tools. And coffee." She almost smiled. "You don't have to help." "I know," he said simply. "But I'm here." Something in her chest softened, like a door opening for the first time in years. As the sun dipped lower, the sky painted streaks of gold and rose across the horizon. Mara felt the world shift subtly around her. The pain was still there, deep and aching, but so was something else, something that felt like a beginning. But the moment of fragile peace didn't last. Far across the road, where the dirt curved into brush and shadow, a figure stood watching them. Mara didn't notice. Jace didn't notice. The figure remained still, his eyes fixed on her with an expression unreadable from the distance. The wind carried his whisper away before anyone could hear it. "You came back, after all this time." And then he turned, vanishing into the thickening dusk. Back by the barn, Mara exhaled softly, unaware of the storm creeping back into her life. Unaware that her return had awakened more than memories. Morning came quietly, slipping over the hills in soft ribbons of silver and gold, touching the broken ranch house as gently as a memory. Mara stood on the front porch with her arms wrapped around herself, watching the sunrise as if trying to gather enough light to fight off everything inside her that still felt dark. She could hear the slow creak of the old wooden boards beneath her feet and the hum of early insects waking across the wide fields. The ranch had always been a place where days began slow, where the world seemed to wait for you before rushing on, but somehow it felt different now, like it was holding its breath along with her. Jace arrived just as she stepped down from the porch, carrying a bucket of tools in one hand and a travel mug of coffee in the other. His presence was steady, grounding, and she found herself relaxing a little just from seeing him. He handed her the coffee without a word, and she accepted it with a small nod of gratitude. They didn't need much conversation in the mornings. Their silence wasn't awkward but companionable, the kind of quiet that felt shared rather than empty. Inside the house, dust rose in soft clouds with every step they took. The air smelled of old wood and forgotten years. Mara opened the windows first, letting in the breeze, letting sunlight crawl across the floors that had been hidden under shadows for too long. Her heart twisted when she realized the place looked exactly as it had when she'd left it, furniture draped with sheets, picture frames turned face down, books fallen off shelves as if the house itself had collapsed in grief the moment she had walked away. She knelt by the fireplace, gathering the brittle remnants of old ash in a small dustpan, while Jace moved through the rooms testing floorboards, tightening hinges, examining everything with patient attention. He didn't comment on the mess or the overwhelming work ahead. He just worked with that quiet determination that made Mara feel less alone in the task. As she reached for more debris tucked near the stone hearth, a strange chill brushed her spine. She turned and froze. An old photo frame lay on the mantel, face down. She distinctly remembered it being upright when she entered earlier. Her breath hitched as she picked it up with careful fingers. Inside was a photo of her father from years ago, standing in front of the barn with his arm wrapped around her shoulders. She was only 12 in the picture, grinning with wild pride because it had been the day she first rode a horse without help. The familiar ache surged in her chest. Jace stepped into the doorway and paused the moment he saw her expression. "Something wrong." She swallowed hard. "I didn't move this. I swear I didn't." She flipped the frame, showing him the picture. It was upright before. He stepped closer, studying the mantelpiece, the dust, the shape of the frame. "Maybe the wind," he suggested gently, but even he didn't sound convinced. Mara shook her head. No breeze could flip something this heavy. Jace didn't argue, just looked at her with concern etched into his features. He reached out and touched her arm lightly. "Want to take a break?" "No," she whispered. "I need to keep going. If I stop, I'll start drowning in my thoughts again." He nodded, respecting her strength, even if it wavered. They worked for another hour. Dusting, sweeping, repairing, reorganizing. Each room slowly began to feel less haunted, less abandoned, though the house still carried a strange energy she couldn't name, like someone had been here recently, like something was waiting to surface. Around noon, after clearing the hallway shelves, Mara heard the crunch of gravel outside. Her chest tightened immediately. Jace was closer to the door and moved to open it with cautious calm. Standing on the porch was a man she hadn't seen in almost 10 years, Raymond Hale, her father's old partner, a man whose presence once brought laughter to the ranch but now only stirred unease. Raymond looked older, harder, his jaw sharper beneath the unkempt beard. But his eyes, those sharp, probing eyes, were the same. He didn't bother with a smile. "Mara," he greeted quietly. "Didn't think you'd ever step foot on this land again." Her breath caught, her heart racing as memories crashed over her. Raymond had been there the night everything fell apart. He was one of the last people to see her father. He was the one who'd told her she needed to leave town if she wanted to stay safe. Jace stepped subtly in front of her, not blocking her completely but shielding her enough to make the message clear. "What do you want?" Jace asked coolly. Raymond's gaze flicked to him briefly, then returned to Mara. "I came to warn her. She shouldn't be here." Mara found her voice, though it trembled. "Warn me about what?" Raymond stepped forward, boots heavy on the porch. "Your father wasn't the man people thought he was. He didn't disappear because he was weak or scared. He didn't leave because of debt. The truth behind his disappearance, it's tangled with this land, with things he promised to men who don't forget broken deals." Mara stiffened. "People said he owed money." Raymond scoffed. "Money was the surface of it. What he owed was far more complicated. And those men still think the debt passed on to you when he vanished." Jace's posture tightened. "If they have a problem, they can talk to me." Raymond studied him with a long, slow stare. "Good men always put themselves in the line of fire without knowing what's coming. But this isn't your fight, rancher." Mara stepped out from behind Jace. "If you know something, then tell me outright. Don't stand here speaking in riddles." Raymond's expression softened, almost regretful. "Mara, some truths you only hear face to face, without houses listening in. If you want answers about your father, meet me at Hollow Creek Bridge tonight." "Alone?" Jace immediately shook his head. "She's not going anywhere alone." But Mara felt something stir in her chest. Fear, yes, but also a desperate need for the truth. The truth she'd been denied for years. The truth every sleepless night had whispered about. Raymond touched the brim of his hat. "Come or don't. It's your choice." He turned away and walked back toward the dirt road, his figure shrinking slowly until it disappeared into the heat-shimmering distance. Inside, the air felt heavier. Jace shut the door with more force than necessary. "You're not meeting him alone." "Not happening." Mara stared at the floor, gripping her own trembling hands. "If he knows something about my father, I need to hear it." "You don't know his intentions," Jace argued. "He could be leading you into something dangerous." "I know." She lifted her eyes to him, her voice steadier now. "But I've spent years living in fear of what might have happened. I need to stop running from it." Jace stepped closer, searching her expression with a mixture of frustration and admiration. "If you're going, I'm coming too. Not beside you, fine. But close enough you're never out of sight." Her chest tightened with emotion she didn't know how to express. "Why? Why are you doing this for me?" He didn't hesitate. "Because you deserve someone who stays when things get dark." The words warmed something deep inside her, something long abandoned. That night, the sky grew heavy with deep blue shadows as Mara approached Hollow Creek Bridge, every step ringing with equal parts fear and resolve. The fields were quiet, the air cold enough to sting her skin. She felt Jace nearby, hidden among the trees like a guardian she had not asked for but desperately needed. When Raymond appeared again, his shoulders looked weighed down by truths too long carried. "You came," he said softly. "I need answers," she replied, hands clenched to hide the trembling. He took a breath that seemed to scrape against his lungs. "Your father didn't run, he was taken, and the people who took him, they're still watching this land." Mara's world tilted, but she stood firm, the wind whipping her hair, her heart pounding. Jace stepped out of the trees silently, placing a hand on her back, steadying, grounding, protective. And in that moment, Mara felt something change inside her. The truth was finally coming. And she wasn't facing it alone.